All right.
I've had guys ask me like, Rolo, hey, I want to have my own kid, but I don't want to have a wife. I want to be like, it's almost like, you know how like women can become single parents if they want to. They can just freeze their eggs, or they can just get a sperm donor or whatever. They have like a right to have children, right?
Yeah.
For a guy to do that, it's like next to impossible. You have to be like very, very rich to do something like that. And you got to find an egg donor, and you've got to really, especially if you want it to be your biological progeny, right? But I tell those guys, like, even if it was easier for you to do that, like an artificial womb or whatever these guys are talking about, I'm like, even if you could do that easily, I know, even if you could do that easily, I don't think it's going to work out the way that you think it's going to work out. Now,
no, I don't think it's a good idea.
Single fathers raise better children than single mothers. Sorry, not sorry. That's statistical reality.
And I found that out, going back to my divorce story. And check your phone, by the way, because I sent you that picture. I just want you to get like a recent image, but don't show it up on the screen. Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm going to send you one. How old is she now? Like 11, 12?
12, yeah.
Well, I'll send you, after the show, I'll send you some pictures.
Yeah. But
what you're going through.
Yeah, like the whole like frying pan of the forehead moment going through the divorce was when I started reading like these forums with men and women going through the divorce machine, and the experience is very, very different. And there was a lot of like moments where like these divorced people were talking about how their children would behave, how they were a product of a certain like household, whatever the dynamic looked like, especially if it was divorced and they didn't have access to the father. And I started to realize that men are really important, and there's been no conversations about this. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, after I got divorced, I started dating right away, obviously, because I was like, I'm done, I'm out. And there was a lot of women that I came across who were either divorced or, I was older at the time. I was around 39. So I was, at that time, because I wasn't red pill, I was dating around the same age, right? And I came across a lot of women that had like severe daddy issues. It's one of the reasons why in my book I have that red flag chapters and why you want to avoid women with daddy issues. And it seemed like a lot of the times they didn't really know why they had daddy issues, but they had them. And when you start to probe and ask questions like, well, what happened to your dad? Did your mom push him out of the house? Did you run off? And they didn't really have an explanation. They didn't have an understanding why. But the thing that really put it all together, there's this doctor, his name's Dr. Leonard Sachs. It's S-A-X. And if you look at the top comment pinned in all my videos, I've got somewhere in there an Amazon link to my bookstore where I recommend read. So I've got all of Rolo's books, my stuff in there, and a bunch of Evo Psych. And one of the books I have in there is from Leonard Sachs, and he came to Toronto as a speaker for an EO event to talk to entrepreneurs about raising kids. And there's a huge difference between what he came across with raising daughters and boys. Like, boys have a different relationship with screens than girls do, right? There's a meme somewhere out there that somebody's pointed out, but girls generally have cameras pointed at them. Boys usually have cameras pointed outwardly. And they stare at screens because they're playing games, competitively. Girls, on the other hand, are comparing themselves to other girls. So if they can get a picture that's more provocative, I'm going to try to put this up this way, kind of slide it up with a downhill shot to get down the top rather than over here, and that gets some more likes than doing that, they're going to be doing this. Right. So one of the questions that somebody asked, which I want to get to about, when do you think it's appropriate to give a daughter a cell phone? I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but really, really important information to get your head around it if you want to have productive kids. Even if you have a son and a daughter, or if you just have one daughter and a bunch of sons, I think it's important that you have healthy, balanced children in that household to begin with, because if you have a messed up girl in your household, that's really going to throw everything for a loop. It's like, you said it earlier with that whole Chris Rock thing, like, the clear field in the pole, right? Like, you want to keep well away from that. But yeah, girls are like, I'm thankful in one regard because I see how bad boys have it. Like, I don't know how guys today are raising boys to be men in the environment they live in. Like, a conversation, like, would you tell your daughter to get married? Obviously, right?
I would like her to get married, but I want her to marry the guy. I want her to marry a guy who's got his shit together, right?
But I mean, if you had a son, would you tell your son to get married?
Not right now. Not certainly not at his age. I would say, don't even. I would tell his son. People ask me, I would tell my son exactly what I tell everybody else: is stay, single, stay, spin plates until you get to be about 30 years old. Understand, like everybody thinks that I got to keep this secret from my family or something. It's like, I know I don't. It's like I tell my nephew the same thing, right? I would tell my daughter, look, I said, look, you're 23 right now. You are at the peak of your game right now. Mm-hmm. You will always look on these years as having the most potential. Make the most of it. I'm not going to tell her anything less, because she needs, if you want her to be competitive, that's how you tell them the truth. Yeah. Like I was telling you before, he's like what when I was telling you about what was it? Homeschooling, right? When I was talking about that and how I was kind of against that, the reason I was against homeschooling is because I think that it in some way insulates kids. Not so like, they're going to be like social, morons or something like that.
It's insulated today. It's been 2 years of essentially homeschooling with this pandemic lockdown, because they're sitting around doing all their school from their bedroom on an iPad.
But I would rather prepare my daughter to be resilient and Teflon, and to critically think. So when people try to throw bullshit at her, or they try to throw all the stuff that we like, you can go and look at any podcast today where they've got lots of women on and everybody's holding them accountable. I don't care which one. They all repeat the same thing over and over again. I don't care if they came from a big family that's still together, or if they had like a single mom or whatever. They're all repeating the same thing. So the best way you can keep your baby off the pole, or keep your baby, sane and have a different opinion of things, is first of all, you got to be involved. We know that. I mean, if children watch what you do, they don't listen to what you say. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, I mean, as you know, I can get long-winded. So if I'm trying to impart some fatherly wisdom, if 10% of that sinks in, I'm happy. Mm-hmm. And that's a kid thing, but it's also people will ask me all the time, what would you tell your 18-year-old self, Rolo? I say, I wouldn't even bother. Because I know my 18-year-old self wouldn't listen to jack shit. Yeah. But what they're really asking me is, what is your advice for the kids today? Which in that case is okay, well, then I can give you some real actionable advice. But I think if you want to keep your baby off the pole, and I mean that metaphorically, if you want to if you want to build strong daughters who are on top of their game, they're not going to be, OnlyFans girls are going to, whatever the poll is per that particular era, you need to, I think it begins in childhood. It begins as far back as 5 years old, when kids are sponges. But it requires you to set a masculine ideal, and it requires your wife to set the female, feminine ideal. Mm-hmm. So the model and that's why they call them role models, right? The model for masculinity that most women have is an absent father, or he's been kicked out of the house for whatever reason, maybe his fault, or basically a gynocentric social order has removed him from that house. And he is not as influential, and he is not as important as he could be if he were to stay in there and to sort of assert himself as a positively masculine role in there, and to be unapologetic about it. And to be that's why I said the basis of all of this, of course, is to internalize red pill awareness and live it out, and let your son or daughter, for that matter, see that this is how my dad is, and this is how it works for him, and this is why Rolo and his wife are still together, and this is why they have coming up on 25 years of marriage, and this is why I'm a good kid. And it's you at some point along the way, if that's the case for you, and I know it's been the case for me, is that eventually when that boy gets to be into their 20s, they'll say, my parents are different. My daughter has lots and lots of friends to this day, but certainly when she was in high school, and I would say about 80 to 90% of them came from single mother homes, or they came from a broken home. I did too. I didn't have my parents split up when I was 8. So that's a rarity. And she realizes that, and she appreciates the fact that she still has 2 functional parents that are in love with each other and really are good for each other and a positive influence on her life.